Rachel, and welcome back to Auxhart Gardening. So today, the garden is covered in snow. Now some of you who live up north might be like, blah blah blah, this happens all the time, but down here in the south, it snows like this like once a year, maybe once every 2 years. It's not a very common thing. And so when you're gardening in the south, you don't exactly plan for snow. Today is the second day since the storm. I took a little video during the storm. I'll go ahead and insert that now. Couldn't get my car out of the driveway for sure. Still can't get it out today. So instead of going sledding with all my friends, I stayed in and made a little snow dude. I had posted on Instagram and YouTube asking you guys to help name him or her. And I got a bunch of suggestions, among them a bunch of very distinguished sounding British names and plant names like rose and ivy and stuff, and they're all really good suggestions. I just could not decide on one. I think I got it down to 2 though, so if you guys want to vote, I'm thinking either Alfred if it's a dude snowman, or Ginger if it's a chick. Snowmen, snow people, they don't have gender. It doesn't really matter, but I think they are gonna be in the garden for at least a few more days, so they might as well have a cute name. So we're not gonna really be able to see all that much on this tour. I'm not gonna go digging plants out of the snow. We can walk up to look at a few things, and I can kind of talk to you guys about what it means for my garden that it's covered in snow right now. Something you can see is the first swale that I dug, covered in snow, but it's here. And so the idea behind this, so you can see I'm on a bit of a slope. The water runs down across the garden towards the road. And so the idea of a swale is we dug out all the dirt and piled it up on the downhill side. And the idea is that the water will run and catch in the swale, and hopefully that will hold it in place long enough next to the ground for it to soak in. Because when there's a lot of rain and it's running across the top of the dirt, there's not enough time for it to actually soak in, and that's why you get a ton running across at one time. But if you can slow it down and give it time to sink in, then it should mitigate the problem that I've been having. I'm also planning on putting another one right in here and maybe another shorter one right there, kind of like speed bumps for the water coming towards my garden. So if we walk up to one of these Brussels sprouts, you can see the leaves under the snow. They actually look fine. They feel fine. The plant just looks a little frosty, but it doesn't look really unhappy. Theoretically, there's no reason snow should be any worse for these plants than being cold, except for the weight of it kind of bending them out of shape and perhaps breaking them a little bit. But the snow isn't any colder than it could be, and actually, if you didn't know, snow in places where it's colder can be a bit of an insulator against extra cold air temperature. So snow is usually pretty fluffy. There's a lot of air pockets, and those air pockets are what can cause something to be insulating. So if you're somewhere where it can get very cold, if your garden is covered in a layer of snow, that actually might protect it from those extra cold temperatures. So snow in the garden is definitely not always a bad thing or something to be worried about. Here's a better example of a Brussels sprout peeking out of the snow. It looks fine. It looks exactly how it did before the snow. This garlic next to it, its leaves are kind of held down by the snow, but it also looks absolutely fine. Now, something you might run into with looking at your plants and determining that they're fine when it's cold outside is whether or not they are actually currently frozen. So after a freeze, a lot of times you'll go out in the morning and your plants will look fine, but later in the day is when they look terrible. So if it hasn't gotten warm enough to be above freezing, then you can't usually say for sure if your plants are okay. Today out here it is a bit above freezing, so leaves poking out, especially in the sunlight, shouldn't be frozen. And I can touch them and feel that they're not crunchy frozen. So just keep that in mind evaluating. I've had several times where I go out after a freeze and I'm like, oh, maybe it didn't actually freeze. Like these plants look okay. And then later they just like droop into mush. Kata's been having a good time in the snow. I got a video of her when it was softer. I can insert that. She did not know what to do with it falling out from under her feet. I don't really want to walk through the middle of the garden right now, mostly because I know that there's some random plants around, like radishes. I really don't want to just like step on anything that I can't see. So maybe when the snow's melted next week, we'll be able to walk through and evaluate how the plants came through just a little better. We can walk right up to the edge of the raised bed though, so I can show you what's going on there. Everything looks so cute poking up through the snow. And the sage, the way its leaves are, catch the snow and the water droplets in a really glittery way. And you can see onions poking out on the edge here. These look pretty alright, except for maybe being a little bent over by the snow. This lavender plant here looks completely fine. Sage looks fine. I can't manage to kill sage. Heat, cold, it just lives. We've got a couple more onions sticking out here. Parsley kind of covered in snow. And then just a few more onions sticking out around the edges. I can't go right up next to the fava beans, but I can kind of zoom in and show you. Right here, the stuff that's poking through the snow, you can kind of see it's that one. It's a little bent over looking. I am not sure how the fava beans will come out of this. They seemed to be a little unhappy with the extreme temperature shift previously, and this is just a continuation of that temperature shift. If you didn't watch my last few tours, we had a period of like 2 weeks where it was warm and the whole garden got very confused about it being warm outside, and then it really snapped to being winter cold freezing temperatures kind of overnight, and so all of these plants were very much not prepared for that, and I think they're faring worse in the cold than they would if it had like gradually gotten colder the way it normally does. Alrighty, well I think that's it for me today. Just a little short garden tour. Next week I'm sure the snow will have melted by then, because snow does not stick around in South Carolina. Thank you guys so much for watching, and until next time, happy gardening.